What do we got the cameras here for, Riley?
Wow, where's the chairman's mic? This is the chairman. Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. If everybody can take their seats, we'll get this meeting started. We have some members that have more than one meeting. So, and everybody will be nice enough to turn off their Blackberries. Would appreciate it. And it's nice to have everybody back, and especially nice to have Representative Reinders, my vice chair. He's the funny guy who breaks the tension when things get too tense around here. So, Ed, I'm glad you're still my vice chair. Thank you very much for having my back.
Thanks so much.
Our secretary, Doug Holt, is at another meeting. Apparently, I hope it's not as controversial as the DOT race seems like it's going to be for our DOT chairman, which happens at 4, but he's at that meeting, and I'm glad to have him back with us. Okay, let's get started, and I will call Representative Watson, House Bill 147. If you'd like to go to the podium. And it's nice also to have the media. I do try to stay out of the media, but sometimes, and informing the citizens of Georgia about issues, it's good to have you here. So thank you very much for coming. Dr. Watson. Got it
on? Thank you, Chairman Cooper, and committee and colleagues here. I certainly appreciate you allowing this opportunity. I have the House Bill 147, the Patient Right to Know Act of 2001. This is a bill that will amend the Patient Right to Know Act of 2001. It will require the Composite State Board of Medical Examiner to add to their list of about 16 things that they require when we fill out and get our licenses back every year. It will add to that list whether or not a physician has malpractice. Upon the research of this bill, we initially considered having a sign put into the waiting room, but doing the research and due diligence there, it looked like the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners had already created this. And in 2001, the Patient Right to Know Act was done, and it is easily accessible through email, through request, whether that's phone or verbal, and it allows the patient that access. This is displayed in every physician's office. It is, in fact, conspicuously displayed, and the patient has that information to them there upon request. It also does actually two other things. It does create a database that we are requesting from the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners that will be collected and presented to the governor and to us, or will be upon our request. We'll be notified that the data is there. And that is being done to allow us to gather information to see if this is a large number or small number, and see what kind of issue this is. And then the last thing, in communication with the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners, they ask us to carry this portion of the bill, in that they found that the infractions that they enforce on physicians are generally minor infractions. This, as I said, is reported yearly, but if there are any changes within those 16 questions or so, which include where you went to medical school and where you did your graduate education, to whether or not you've had any malpractice cases against you, judgments and settlements. It also asks the question whether or not you had Medicaid, whether you accept Medicaid or not. And the one that they find that is the one that's most offended is whether or not your location has changed. And all of this is supposed to be reported within 30 days. Malpractice settlements and judgments are to be reported within 5 days. And they have found that physicians have forgotten to notify them within that 30 days, and they are actually required to find the physician, and then that is part of the physician profile for the rest of his life. So they would just like that discretion to allow them not to necessarily find the physician or put it in the profile that he or she did not notify them with a change of address. Certainly, this would be considered a minor infraction, and the other major infractions, I think, would not be changed at all.
Representative Watson. Who's 15? Okay, Representative Byrd.
Thank you very much. I'm curious. I want to be sure that I understand what you're talking about, that we are now going to mandate every physician to have a sign placed somewhere or have the ability for me to ask whether they have malpractice insurance or not.
Right. I initially thought that a sign was a good idea until I did the research, and I thought this was an easily accessible, already enforceable area of the law. And of those, the questions that I listed, not all of them, but I listed many of them, it would be just an addition to that question. And I did fail to mention that we're trying to tease out the numbers of physicians that do not have malpractice. Now, again, if you go to a hospital, then you're required to have malpractice coverage. If you accept insurance, then you will be credentialed and you'll have malpractice coverage. So this would be a physician that does not accept insurance, is a cash-only business, and does not go to the hospital. Yes, that information will be available to the patient, and it will be in the patient profile, and it will be one amongst 16 questions that will be there. That's what we're asking.
Follow up? So this means that we are trying to weed out physicians in the state of Georgia that do not have malpractice insurance.
No, I don't think we're trying to weed them out at all. I mean, they may elect to not cover malpractice. It will engender the conversation. In other states, physicians have elected to, quote unquote, go bare, but they'll put up $1 million in the bank, or they'll have $1 million line of credit, and if there is a bad outcome, they'll assume that responsibility. That is what Florida does.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Ms. Representative, I want to commend you on this bill. One of the things I want to know, does the Board of Composite already maintain a database with all of the information except for what you're asking them to add?
Exactly.
They do, so, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, do they obtain the database? No, they don't have the database.
Okay.
That's why we're asking them
Okay.
to collate that. It shouldn't be an issue. It is all recorded there. And they do there are some other, we ask for other information just besides this 16 to try to get at the retired physicians also.
The other thing, do they also maintain what privileges, what hospitals these physicians have privileges in? Because that's been a problem in my area, especially in obstetrics. There have been some physicians that cared for patients, and then when delivery time came, I don't have privileges at that hospital. So
right, that is in there. It's number 7. Is current hospital privileges. It's in the Patient Right to Know Act of 2001.
So it's already currently recorded.
It is in there, yes. And it's updated every 30 days, or supposed to be. Right.
That ought to be on a sign somewhere too, because
we've
had a lot of that.
It is in every physician's office, and it is, like I said, conspicuously displayed. So you have access again, by email. You have access by letter. You have access by phone, verbal.
Mm-hmm.
It's there.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What's the penalty on if I don't report?
It's in here. I think it's $500 is the penalty.
How much is malpractice on average? What would I do? Is it $500 a year, $500 per occurrence, $500 per what?
In other words, the penalty for not complying to the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners, or the Patient Right to Know Act. Mm-hmm. You know, the penalty, I think, is to the discretion of the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners. I would presume it's up to loss of licensure also. It is in your patient profile, and there are fines to that. I don't know the answer to that. I understand what you're getting at. Is, in other words, would it be cheaper to not have to pay the fine and not get the malpractice?
Right.
I'm certainly sensitive to that. And again, we're collecting data, and that's part of why we're doing this. Is there an issue? Is this a problem in Georgia? We don't want it to be.
Now, getting back to Representative Randall's issue, because all the physicians in the state have to go through a national practitioner database that are practicing, and they also are credentialed. And one of the checks is malpractice. So you're looking at, and these are doctors that are practicing, that have privileges at these hospitals and things of that nature.
No. Let me just elaborate. If you go to the hospital and you have privileges, all hospitals in the state require you to have medical malpractice coverage.
Right.
If you accept insurance, then you're credentialed, and they require you to have malpractice coverage. So they will be, I mean, every physician in the state of Georgia will certainly answer the question, do you have malpractice coverage or not? I mean, it will be yes or no. Yes, and all those physicians do. If you don't go to the hospital, or if you don't accept insurance and you're dealing in a cash-only business, then you can elect to have malpractice or not have malpractice coverage.
All right. And my final question, Madam. What problem are we trying to fix?
Well, I mean, that's a good question. Is there a problem that exists? And that's why we're asking the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners to report back to us yearly, and I think we need to follow up on this.
Okay.
Good question.
I asked Representative Watson if he wanted to carry this bill because it was brought to my attention over the summer, and you might have missed it in the Atlanta area. But we had a rogue physician who I think was an ENT specialist, ears, nose, and throat, and had decided to do plastic surgery. He had performed plastic surgery in his office, just a little thing like that, with very bad results on several cases. And when those patients tried to go forward and get some kind of compensation, they found that he did not carry malpractice insurance. And in discussions with the reporters and talking to the medical board, I think that they were shocked to find that physicians didn't have to carry malpractice insurance. And I think, Dr. Watson, if I'm correct, and you may have talked to MAG since I have the Medical Association of Georgia, they think that it would be less than 5% of the physicians. There's about 15,000 physicians in the state of Georgia. They're not even sure it would be anywhere near that high because of the fact that, like Representative Watson said, if you were going to practice in a hospital or you're going to get reimbursed insurance-wise, you have to have the malpractice and prove that you do. But that's why the issue came to the foreground.
Right, and the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners, when they found that we were doing this, they were supportive of this, and again, they asked us to make a minor change. Of course, MAG Mutual, who insures about 60% of all physicians in the state of Georgia, they certainly want it because they want more people to be insured. But so.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm sorry, I might have missed this. I have two particular questions. Line 34, where you're changing shall or from shall to may. What is the reason for that?
That was what the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners asked us to do.
Why?
Because of they're finding that most, over 50% of the infractions that they are seeing are young physicians that are changing locations and not notifying the Composite State Board of Medical Examiners within 30 days. And that's required in the Patient Rights No Act. So they would like the discretion for any minor infraction like change in location and not notifying them within that 30 days to not fine the physician and like the discretion to consider not to fine them or put that in the physician profile for the rest of his life that he had an infraction.
My second question is on Section 4. Obviously, since you said this database does not exist now, so it'll have
No,
to be created?
No, it's there. It is the data is there, but they don't report it to us.
But the database is not.
It is computerized. I mean, it's there. It is not collated and put together and presented to us in a fashion that would be able to give us make us be able to make a reasonable decision.
So what you're asking then is for the board to go through the work necessary to take that data and compile and collate it. What would be the expense of doing that?
Yes, we are asking them to compile the data for us. The Composite State Board of Medical Examiners did not report any more expense, and I don't know whether that would increase expense or not.
Okay, I think it would be important to know that, given where we are in so many areas of what we're seeing, and with trying to control cost. So I think it would be important for us to know if that would create an expense there.
I agree.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to pick up on Representative Jurgensen's line of questioning in regards to line 34 with the shall to the may. Currently, do you have any information on how much is collected each year under the shall?
I do not know.
And do you know what happens with those fees that are collected or fines that are collected?
No.
Madam Chair, do you have that information?
Right. The funds would go back into the state funds. They don't go to the department. And the medical board is one of the few boards where they take in more in what the physicians pay than they are allotted back in funds. So there is an excess from what physicians are charged than what is allotted back for the board to function.
It's actually, I think, about 3 times. We to get a license, I think it's I want to say $250, $300 a year. The Composite State Board spends about 1/3 of that. That's what they're allowed in there.
Where? Okay. Did she?
We don't know the total amount.
Pardon?
Do we know that total amount of the funds? Does anybody have that information?
I got it right here. Give me just a second.
Okay.
We'll digest it.
Representative Watson, would you like for LaShawn Hughes, who is the Executive Director of the Medical Board, to come and answer some of these questions that are directly rated to the board for you?
I certainly would appreciate that.
I didn't see you, LaShawn, or I would have said that earlier. I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were here.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be happy to answer questions. We are revenue positive. We collect renewal fees, application fees, duplicate fees, and we return all of that to the General Treasury. The question about the shall and the may, we've asked for that language to be put in. We have 4 medical schools, and physicians will get licensed here. They'll move on to different locations away from the medical school and forget to change their address. And according to the profile, the law as it stands now, we have to find them. We post it on our website. It's not the fine that's really the problem. They'll pay the fine for not changing their address. It's the punishment that comes with the fine, which is a public board order that stays on the board's website forever. So it follows a young physician who is newly licensed. It follows their career for the rest of their lives. And so we're asking for discretion, not for people who blatantly violate the law, but people who have good reasons. Their address changed, they failed to pick up the certified letter, or the address changed and we couldn't reach them. So that's why we're asking for that change.
May I continue, Madam Chair? Do you have the number of times in which a fine was issued last year?
No, I do not.
I certainly can appreciate we don't need to hit a fly with a sledgehammer, but total discretion. What would be some of the more serious instances that could be looked the other way at?
Okay. Let me give you the example of one that we would definitely fine if we had the discretion. We find everybody now. If we write them 2 or 3 letters every 60 days, from 60 days from the point of their license, they have to enter their profiles. And so if they don't in the first 60 days, we send out a PIN, user ID and PIN for them to do this online. If they don't, then we send another additional letter, and then we send another letter. So we're writing the physicians over the course of 3 months. And if the physician will come in with 30 days out, show proof that I moved, I had an office practice, or I practiced at medical college and they didn't forward my mail, then we ask for them to provide some proof. And if they do, those are the ones we would like to have the discretion to help. If not, and they just thumb their nose at the board, those are the ones that we would like to be able to post the fine.
Finally, Madam Chair, I just, since I don't know those percentages, there's just a part of me that thinks, again, I don't want to hit the fly with the sledgehammer. Maybe we can write that where it gives those examples, but then the ones that deserve it, deserve it.
Right.
Just a food for thought. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And the fine is generally $500 a day.
Thank you. To Sharon, I had a question with regarding sending letters repeatedly. If they keep going to the same address and the physician's not getting the first one, the second one, or the third one, and you're not necessarily aware of that.
Well, we do Google physicians, or we really try to find them.
Oh, I understand.
If the post office will put a return, then we forward it to the next address that they give us. If it comes back after 1 or 2 attempts, then we stop and try to find them through a Google search or some other way.
I think what I'm a little confused about, I mean, I've read this bill. We're talking about medical malpractice, which is what the bill's about, and a physician doesn't have to have medical malpractice. He can self-insure. And yet you're talking about license of a physician, aren't you?
Right. All of that.
So, I mean, why are we talking about licenses and putting a physician's name up as being disciplined for not having his license when this is actually dealing with malpractice insurance? Did I totally miss something? Or?
No, I mean, it is sometimes difficult to get your hand around. This is an amendment to the Patient Right to Know Act of 2001. This is just, there are 16 questions that are asked, and this will be 17, and that's basically the big picture of it.
The question is, do you have malpractice insurance?
Correct.
And we are finding that physicians are lying in their answers. I mean,
No, that is not in the law now. That is not in the Patient Right to Know Act. That's what we're adding to it.
Is there a reason? I mean, a doctor's not, if I went into a physician and said, do you have medical malpractice, are they not forthcoming and saying, yes, I do, no, I don't, or I'm self-insured?
I'm not aware of that happening. I mean, is that...
Then why are we passing this?
The question to that, as a patient, most people are uncomfortable asking their physician things about where'd you go to school, do you have... So the Patient Right to Know Act was passed. So as a consumer, you could go to the board's website and look at all of that information online to see where your doctor went to school, where he trained, if he's had complaints, if he's had malpractice. So now one additional item will be added to that questionnaire is you'll be able to look to see if your physician has malpractice insurance. It's for information. So you get, as a consumer, can make a determination whether you want to see this physician if he doesn't carry malpractice.
So this has absolutely nothing to do with the interaction between the patient and the physician. This strictly has to do with information that would be up on a website.
Right.
Assuming, of course, that all our citizens are literate, know how to use a computer, and can look it up.
And you can call the board office, and we will provide the physician profile for free. We'll mail it, fax it, or email it to any consumer that asks for it.
Representative Henson, I think that there is an amendment that's going to be offered, since I asked to see amendments ahead of time, that might address your feeling if patients are illiterate, don't know how to go to a website, don't use the computer. So that will be forthcoming after we, for the committee's consideration after we finish answering questions. Who's at number 9? Oh, Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'll be really brief. I'm just wondering, under Section 3, line 37, when it talks about the violation, is there an elaboration in the report of what the violation is?
A violation would be either not reporting it in a timely fashion. And that's mostly would be the violation.
I guess my question is does it indicate there is a violation, or does it elaborate on what that violation is? Because some are going to be obviously
in the physician profile that is there.
But some are obviously going to be worse than others.
Let me repeat the question. You're asking how is it listed in the physician profile?
Right, because I'm one of the people that's happy
violation.
Right, I'm one of the people that's happy with the May, because we don't want to punish our physicians unnecessarily. But when there is a record of a violation, do we elaborate on that violation, since some are worse than others?
Right. When we post the profile, if there is a violation and we take a sanction, and the medical board takes a sanction against a physician, we post the action, the description of the action, the type of violation, whether it's profiles or not. Like if it's quality of care or unprofessional conduct, impairment, or aided or assisted unlicensed practice, and this would be other violated the profile statute.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. That's all. Okay, Representative Chokas.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Could I make? I'm sorry. I want to make one comment and answer Representative Reinders there. It will not increase the cost to have the board do this. Okay. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Representative Watson or Dr. Watson, thank you for bringing this important legislation before us. And Representative Henson, I think to answer your concerns, I've proposed an committee amendment to this legislation, and it should be passed out and on your desks. And basically, what it does, in its amendment AM 330990. And in the interest of transparency and making sure that the patients understand that the doctor or the physician that they're seeing does not have malpractice insurance, and in the case where they are, like me, computer illiterate, they will be asked or they will be informed by the physician. And also, this would also protect the physician in that he said, she said, would eliminate that type of situation, because there'll be a signed document in the patient's file saying that the doctor informed the patient of the doctor's choice not to carry malpractice insurance. And I would like to submit that as an amendment to this, and I would respectfully ask y'all to review it and approve it.
All right, at the proper time. Okay, do we have further questions? Okay, so the position that we're in, Representative Watson's bill would create, would add to the physician's profile, which is already out on a website, that is under the auspices of the Composite Medical Board, where patients can go and look up their physician and gain a lot of information, where they went to school and so forth. This would add another slot to that, and you would be able to find out if your patient carries, if your physician carries malpractice insurance. Or if Representative Chokas's amendment passes, it would give another option. It would require all physicians who do not carry malpractice insurance to notify the patient through a signed document that would be kept in the chart. So for sure that patients who didn't know how to use a computer and so forth would be able to know that their doctor did not carry malpractice. Okay, questions on the amendment? Representative Henson.
Not necessarily on the amendment, but is this exempting the doctors that are working at our free clinics? Because it's saying whether the patient actively sees patients a minimum of 5 hours a week. Because some of them could be working many more than 5 hours. Where does it...
Okay. Yeah, Representative.
Yeah.
Representative Watson.
Physicians in a free clinic are covered, are given immunity. And remember, we visited the free clinic last week, and they are covered. What we were trying to do with that, in conjunction with Composite State Board of Medical Examiners, trying to tease out which physicians have a license who are retired but do not have malpractice. That's what we were trying to tease out, because many physicians will continue to have a license and pay the licensing fee every year, but they will elect not to have malpractice and yet stay retired, but they want to continue to have their license. Did that answer your question?
To some extent it answers my question, but it raises another one, because malpractice on certain specialties is incredibly exorbitant.
Right.
And my question is, if someone is reducing their practice, I don't know if you can answer this, does the amount of their malpractice get reduced with the amount of time that they're actively practicing medicine?
Just
No.
my personal experience, it does not change. Sometimes it can even go up because you're reducing your volume. So no, I don't. It does not change that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
Representative Byrd.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So once again, government is going to take over for personal responsibilities because someone failed to ask their doctor, one, if they had a certificate to perform plastic surgery or anything else. So we are constantly taking away that personal responsibility that it's up to me to decide for myself if I should ask whether a doctor should have malpractice insurance or not. Is that correct?
Representative Byrd, I think that would be one way to interpret it. Another way would be trying to make as transparent as possible the situation that a patient might find themselves in and might not, know that. I think there's probably assumption across this state and with most people that most physicians, or that all physicians, carry malpractice insurance. It's probably very inconceivable to people that any physician would practice without it. So there's two ways to look at it.
Could I comment? Yeah,
Certainly.
The I did consider what Representative Chicas is adding, and that was initially what I thought was the right approach. But after consideration, I mean, we do not require engineers. We don't require lawyers. We don't require my wife, who's a special education teacher, who has malpractice. I mean, all of those lawyers, they all have malpractice. Lawyers I think are about 67% coverage for malpractice. We're not asking them to put a sign in their office to say whether or not you have malpractice or not. We are singling out physicians to do that, and that's why I elected to go in this format. It is easily accessible. Email, you can call, you can write a letter, you can show up in person. It is easy to get. Like I said, it's conspicuously displayed in the physician's office, this place to reference this.
Another question? Okay. Representative Reinders.
Thank you. I'll be brief, Madam Chair. Just a couple of questions. Are you good, Representative Watson, with the Chocus Amendment?
I would respectfully, I would not, that's not the route that I chose to go. I would not, I mean, I don't know what the protocol here is, whether we vote on it or agree to it or whatever, but if we vote on it, I would not vote for that amendment.
Thank you. And finally, just for the sake of clarification, if we were to pass the Chocus Amendment, if the physician didn't do what Representative Chocus Amendment asked him to do, would that be a violation that
would be
may or may not show up and may or may not be fined?
Well, I mean, that would be $500 a day fine.
At the discretion of
the board, and
right.
I presume the board is not going to take that lightly.
Thank you.
Okay. Further questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion? I think we're to the point that we've answered most of the questions. Do I hear a motion on the substitute to House Bill 147? Do I hear a second? Okay, we have somebody that's moved on the bill and a second. Now, before we have any further discussion about that, we will take up the amendment. Okay, we have Amendment 330990, okay, which reads, in addition to having this put out on the website, it would, a physician who does not carry any medical malpractice insurance shall provide notice to each of his or her patients that he or she does not carry medical malpractice insurance. Such notice to the patient shall be documented in the patient's chart on a separate document signed by the patient. Discussion on the amendment. No discussion? Do I have a motion?
Thank you. I'd like to discuss with the author of this, because I don't want any unintended consequences. I want to logistically work this out in my mind. I've got patients that I see who currently do not have this in their chart. When they come to see me the next time, I must tell them that, and we put it in their chart, whether we see them quarterly, next week, or 6 years from now. But if I don't have medical malpractice and somehow my chart was to be looked at, am I going to be in any kind of violation or fine because I haven't seen my new patient since?
No, it would be going forward after the bill passes
Okay.
in the next visit with the patient.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Other questions on the amendment? Representative Jurgensen.
Logistically, how is the board going to investigate something like this? I'm trying to get my hands around the logistics of something like this. I mean,
think this
are they
would-
going to go in and review every doctor that doesn't have medical malpractice insurance and look at every single chart in their office, or are they going to wait for an incident to occur? Yeah, how would this happen?
Well, first of all, sorry.
I'm sorry.
You asked me that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we're talking about the amendment, right?
Yes.
No, we're talking, yeah.
Yeah, I guess I defer to Representative Chokas on that, or
I'm sorry? Yes, I'd like,
Okay,
Madam
wait.
Chair.
Okay. Representative Jurgensen, it would be in the chart. It would be when the board has a complaint, would be the way that then, because once they get a complaint, they investigate the complaints. And so that would be at the time that they would go out and they would be looking at the patient's charts at that point. So that's when it would be done.
Is there any audit procedure currently for making sure that these rules are being followed? Like, does somebody from the board go out to see that these signs are up in a conspicuous place? You know, how does this work?
Let LaShawn do it.
We don't have the resources to make sure that happens. We would have to wait for a complaint to come in. If an agent is in the area or investigating a doctor's office, therefore a complaint, then we could check at that time, but not to randomly audit to see.
You got another one, Representative Jurgensen?
I'm thinking.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, we got Representative Kaiser.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I'm sort of with Sean and Vice Chairman on this one. It's just feels real slippery. So I guess I'm thinking what you said about contractors, and contractors could technically be dealing with people's lives if the house fell in on them, but we're talking about people's lives. But then this is a real boost for the insurance company to have, if you have a doctor as a sign says, I don't carry malpractice insurance, and loses all his patients. So would you speak to this? Because I'm really not comfortable voting on
Boost
it.
to the
On the amendment. I'm not comfortable with the amendment at all. I was originally. So I'm wondering if the doctor could speak to his concerns about the amendment.
Well, I mean, I don't, as I said, I don't think it's a make or break issue. I think that, I think it does engender the conversation whether or not you have malpractice or not, and it does raise that issue. Was Mag Mutual all over putting a sign up in the doctor's office and having them sign something? Yes, they were. But if I were an insurance company, I would be out for to advertise also. But I think it does engender the conversation, and from that standpoint, it's just not it was not the avenue that I chose. I thought it was one more thing that I already hand out 6 pages of information now to every patient, every new patient that I see. I didn't see that a 7th page was going to add to that. Most people don't necessarily read that, and it is part of. There are pages that I scan in, and there are pages that are for patient information only. Part of that is HIPAA and the things that have been quote unquote put on us, and a lot of that is good. I will certainly give you that, but it does. There is a burden there.
Okay, who we got? Who's 25? Okay, Representative Harden.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chairman. This to me seemed just like something extra to put on the physician, and I'm not sure that the patient will actually benefit from this as long as the notice is there. The other thing that occurs to me is, as you know, when you are audited by the insurance companies, any slight technical violation can be very costly to a physician, and if somebody forgot to put this in a chart, I think it'd be a real problem. I don't think we ought to put this burden on our physicians. I think the original bill addresses it adequately.
Okay. Is that all the discussion on the amendment? Okay. Do I hear a motion on Representative Choka's amendment? Representative Reiner.
Madam Chair, this is quite interesting. But I think at the end of the day, we're talking about, is there a downside to letting more patients know that the physician doesn't have medical malpractice? I think at the end of the day, the consumer is the most important thing here. So with some reservation, I motion that the Chokas amendment do pass.
Do I hear a second? I have a motion and a second. I have a motion and a second. Everyone in favor of Amendment 33? Right. Representative Jurgensen.
There's a lot of information that's been given during this time, and the way you just phrased that, Representative, really matters. This is, this is certainly not a delay tactic for me, but I really would like more time to think this through, because this is a significant change in what doctors may or may not have to do going forward. And hearing the bill and hearing the amendment, I see both sides of it. I really do, and I think I'd like to get more information about it from from the representative and from the board before I cast a decision. So I'm going to move that we table this bill to our next meeting, and so that we can have time to digest this a little bit more.
Okay. Okay, I will recognize you to make a motion to table.
So moved.
Do I hear a second? Hearing no second, then we will go forward. On the amendment, everyone in favor of Amendment 330990, say aye. Aye. Everyone opposed?
No.
All right. I think the noes have it. Let's do it by hands. Everybody in favor of the amendment, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Everyone opposed? Same. Okay. The amendment fails. Now back on the VIN. We have a motion and a second on the substitute to House Bill 147. Okay. Who? Josh? Representative Clark.
Well, I had a question before the amendment failed, so I guess I no longer need to ask it.
Oh, it was about the amendment? Oh, okay. So, all right. All right. No further discussion. Then everyone in favor of the substitute to House Bill 147, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No? Okay, the ayes have it, and the substitute to House Bill 147 has passed. Okay. Okay, thank you. Representative Hatchett, House Bill 145. Yes. What? No. It's Representative Watson's bill. It's not my bill. So. Okay.
No, I got it. So I got it.
All right. Okay. So that's who did your plastic surgery and the hair removal. Okay. Or the hair implants, one or the other. Maybe that's it. Okay. House Bill 147, wait a minute, 145. Representative Hatchett.
Thank you,
got
Chairman
it.
Cooper. This bill is titled the Georgia Physical Therapy Act. It's revising a definition of that act. The Georgia Physical Therapist Board has asked that we add the dry needling as a approved treatment in their daily activities. It's something that's they've been doing for years. I do have a professional here, Herb Silver, representing the Georgia Physical Therapist, that would probably benefit all of you and all of us to hear exactly what dry needling is and when they use it and why they use it. So if y'all will give me that liberty, I'm going to let him explain that. So,
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Silver.
Again, my name is Herb Silver. I'm a physical therapist. I practice in Georgia. And after that last conversation, I do have malpractice. I have $5 million in malpractice. 3 incidents a year. Okay. So first off, I want to thank this committee for at least hearing this bill. It's been a big area of confusion for those of us practicing in this area, and I want to clarify what dry needling is, and I guess I should clarify where the problem came from. I believe it was in 2009 as part of the rewrite of the Practice Act, that inserted into the Practice Act was in the Acupuncturist's Practice Act was a definition of dry needling. They redefined dry needling as the practice of acupuncture in so many words. I apologize, I don't have the exact wording, but that's where the confusion is dry needling the practice of acupuncture? After that was changed, some physical therapists were charged with practicing acupuncture by doing dry needling, and they were called before the board, and it became an issue. In June of 2010, at our board meeting, the Composite Medical Board met with our board, and Mrs. Hughes was there, and she can correct me if I misrepresent anything. I don't want to misrepresent anything, so she can keep me honest here. It was brought to our attention that we had a problem. No one had paid attention to this rewriting before the bill was passed. The Acupuncture Board's bill was passed, and now we were faced with a problem of what to do about it. The Composite Medical Board came to our board, and we had a discussion, and we agreed that we would work together to resolve this issue. I am not privy to the conversations between the boards. I don't know exactly what took place, but in summary, what came out of this, thanks to Representative Cooper, is this bill, and I think I've characterized that correctly. So I will go into the history just briefly of what dry needling is and where it came from. This is the Trigger Point Manual. This is the textbook that covers this issue. Dry needling in the late 1940s, a physician, Janet Travell, was injecting. She would take a needle, a hypodermic needle, and inject a tender area, a trigger point. We all have these. You work at a computer, you get sore in the muscle. She was taking a needle, injecting an anesthetic into the area, and taking it out, and she realized that people said, oh, that feels much better before the medication could have an effect. So what she started doing was just taking a hypodermic needle without any medication and sticking it in the area, hence the term dry needling. That term comes from a Western practicing physician. She wasn't knowledgeable of acupuncture. So that's the term dry needling. It's just the use of a needle stuck into a tender area. In the 1970s, when acupuncture became more common in this country, acupuncture needles were available. It made more sense to use a very fine monofilament that's not stiff like a hypodermic needle to stick into these areas. But there wasn't much research supporting this. So in the physical therapy training, we learn a lot about trigger points. That's a lot of what we treat. We use different modalities. We use ultrasound, we use massage, we use electrical stimulation, laser, you name it. Over the past, let's say 20 years, so from about 1990, the research has begun to support the idea that sticking a needle into a tender area has a therapeutic effect. And I can literally lecture on this for hours because that's my doctoral research, so I'll spare you. Editor of this, one of the editors of this book is Lois Simons. She's a physical therapist. She was founding professor of the Georgia State Physical Therapy Program in the 1970s. So the concept of trigger points and the treatment of trigger points has been part of the physical therapy for a long time. As a matter of fact, this is one of the most popular medical textbooks in the world, and now the new edition will be edited by 2 Georgia physical therapists and 1 chiropractor who's not from Georgia. Presently, at Georgia State, Mercer University, and North Georgia College and University, there's active research on dry needling by non-physical therapists. So I'll leave it at that. If there are any questions, I can gladly answer them.
Okay. Representative Watson.
The way I understand it, this was previously physical therapists, this was part of their quote-unquote job title, job description, or part of the legislation affecting physical therapists, and it was left out in the rewriting of that act. Is that correct?
The only thing that changed was there was a change in the Acupuncture Practice Act where it said that they defined dry needling as the practice of acupuncture.
Okay, all right.
There's nothing in our Practice Act that says anything one way or another.
Okay.
So this will add it.
This adds it. That's a correction to the confusion that occurred when the acupuncturists specifically added that wording.
So in other words, the acupuncture legislation should have said that dry needling was done by physical therapists and that should have been allowed.
There's boilerplate language in most practice acts that says nothing in my practice act is going to infringe on what someone else does, and that would have helped. Our practice act says that. Lots of people do ultrasound, lots of people do electrical stim. Lots of things people do what I do. So.
Other questions for the representative or for Mr. Silver? Okay, Representative Henson.
If I understand this correctly, all we're doing is correcting something that got taken out as a result of the rewrite in 2009. I mean, it didn't get put back in properly. It was something you've done. It's something that we need to continue to allow you to do, you as a profession. Is that correct?
Representative Henson, let me answer that for you since I carried that bill. Can't remember exactly. LaShawn, it was 147 pages or something like that because the Medical Practice Act covers acupunctures and physical therapists and PAs, and there's a whole lot. All it did was it was in the acupuncture section, and it didn't add the words that would say that they weren't the only ones that could do acupuncture. So it was not just specific to their practice. And so all we're doing is, and it's the physical therapists or the other people that do dry needling, and the acupuncture saw an opportunity and they were turning in the physical therapies and trying to get them in trouble. So we're just correcting that.
So at the proper time, Would a motion be in order?
Yes, ma'am, but I've got one over here. I'll let you second it.
Okay.
Are there
thanks.
any other questions? All right, it's the proper time, Representative Reinders.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd make motion to pass.
Okay,
I
the mo-
second.
Got a motion and a second from Representative Henson. Any further discussion? Everyone in favor of House Bill 145, say aye. Everyone opposed, say no. Okay, the ayes have it. Thank you very much.
And thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay.